There's a specific sound a lot of people born between 1965 and 1980 still remember. A key turning in a lock, a door swinging open, to a quiet house. No voices, no one calling your name from the kitchen. Just the hum of a refrigerator. And whatever you turned on the TV for, not because you wanted to watch, but because silence felt too much, like being forgotten. You were maybe 9, maybe 11. You heated up whatever was in the cabinet. Did your homework at a kitchen table nobody else was sitting at, and figured out the rest. Alone. Nobody checked on you. And somewhere along the way, that stopped feeling like neglect and started feeling like just who you are. Fast forward 30 years, you're a parent now. And if someone tried to leave your kid the way you were left, you'd lose your mind. And the generation that was never checked on became the generation that cannot stop checking. And nobody can explain why, including you. Some of you literally wore your house key around your neck, on a piece of yarn. Not jewelry, a signal. It meant there's no one home, so here's how you get in yourself. Between 1970 and 1990, the share of working mothers with children under 6 jumped from roughly 37% to nearly 60%, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Both parents working wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was survival. And the kids learned to manage. An empty house, an empty afternoon. An empty feeling you didn't have words for yet. But being alone wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was what came after, when your parents finally came home, exhausted, carrying their own weight. Divorce rates hit historic highs through the 70s and 80s. Financial pressure was constant. Kids pick up on all of it. So some of you didn't just manage yourselves. You managed them too, stayed quiet when they seemed overwhelmed. Stopped bringing your problems because theirs already seemed bigger. Psychologists call this emotional parentification, when a child absorbs the emotional labor that the adults around them can't carry. It doesn't look like neglect from the outside. But it teaches a developing brain one specific thing. Your needs come second. And then you grow up, have kids, and spend 20 years making sure they never learn that. Here's what's strange about Gen X as a generation. They are deeply, almost religiously, proud of their independence. They figured things out alone, didn't need hand-holding. They're tougher for it, and they mean it. That's not performance. But watch what happens when their kid comes home upset about school, or struggles to make a team, or runs into a teacher who treats them unfairly. Something shifts. It's not quite helicopter parenting. They're not scheduling every hour or doing their kids' homework. Generational researchers have called it stealth fighter parenting, mostly hands-off. Let the kid handle their own drama. Let them fall. Let them figure it out. But when something actually matters, they go in hard. Principal's office, phone calls, showing up with an intensity that surprises even themselves. Because here's what Gen X never fully resolved. They know what it felt like to need someone and have no one come. And they cannot let their kid know that feeling. So the independence they're so proud of coexists with a deep, almost irrational need to be present in a way their own parents never were. That's not a contradiction. That's a scar that learned how to love. Developmental psychologists have a name for what happens when adults parent in direct response to their own childhood wounds. They call it Intergenerational Trauma Rebound, and it almost never lands in the middle. When someone grows up feeling emotionally undersupported, the response as a parent isn't measured recalibration. It's a pendulum swing. You overcorrect toward the opposite of what hurt you. The problem is, pendulums don't stop at center. A researcher named Diana Baumrind spent decades mapping what actually works in parenting. She found that the most effective parents weren't the strictest, and they weren't the most permissive. They held two things at once: genuine warmth and clear expectations. She called it authoritative parenting, not to be confused with authoritarian, which is just strict without the warmth. Authoritative means, I am here for you, and you are still accountable. Kids raised that way handle stress better, develop stronger self-esteem, and show fewer long-term issues with anxiety and depression. The research has been replicated across decades. When you listen to how Gen X parents describe what they're trying to do, present but not suffocating, firm but warm, there without taking over, it maps almost exactly onto that framework. Not because they read the research, because they reverse engineered it from memory. From knowing specifically what it felt like when the warmth wasn't there. There's also something worth understanding about why videos like this one make people cry. Researchers who study narrative identity have found that when someone finally encounters language for something they've carried wordlessly for years, the emotional release can be significant. Being seen isn't just comforting. For people who spent childhood being functionally invisible, it can feel almost physical. That's not weakness. That's decades of accumulated silence finally finding somewhere to land. Here's the part worth sitting with. Solitude wasn't just something Gen X survived. For a lot of them, it became identity. The quiet house, the long afternoons, the hours spent inside their own heads. That's where they developed the self-reliance, the skepticism, the internal compass they still navigate by. They didn't need external validation to know who they were, because they'd been building that inner architecture since they were 10 years old, with a key around their neck. That capacity for solitude is real. It produced people who are genuinely good at being alone, who don't collapse without constant reassurance, who learned early that the world doesn't pause for your feelings. But here's what doesn't get said out loud. The thing Gen X parents are most afraid to pass on isn't struggle. It isn't hardship. And it's the specific texture of that silence. The particular weight of a house where no one is waiting. The moment a child understands, clearly and without drama, that they are mostly on their own. They can articulate all day how independence builds character. They believe it. And they still cannot bring themselves to let their kids sit in that feeling, because they remember exactly what it felt like. That's the tension no parenting book fully captures. The most self-reliant generation in recent American history is raising kids with the lights on, the door unlocked, and one ear always listening for footsteps down the hall. Not because they forgot what autonomy is worth, because they remember what it cost. If you're watching this after your kids have gone to bed, the house finally quiet, the day finally done, some part of you still half listening for someone to need something, this is for you. You grew up in a house where the absence of crisis was basically the same as being fine. Nobody asked too many questions. You learned to compress your needs into something small and manageable so you wouldn't burden people who were already carrying too much. And you got good at it. Maybe too good. You became someone who held everything together quietly, who built a version of strength that looked a lot like not needing anyone. And then you had kids, and you felt something unexpected. This completely unreasonable determination that they would never once wonder if someone was paying attention. That they would always, without question, I know there was someone to call. You didn't get to be a kid who was checked on. But you became a parent who checks. That shift, from the child who managed alone to the adult who shows up, didn't happen automatically. It took a decision, made quietly without anyone noticing, to stop the cycle with you. That's not small. That's the whole thing. If this put words to something you've been carrying, share it with someone who'd recognize themselves in it.